to read the Burda. That's to read any salawat. Ghazali mentions that explicitly, which he states, Ghazali Hujjatul Islam says that whenever you mention the Prophet ﷺ, you mention his name as though you see him. That's with any mention of the Prophet ﷺ's name. People don't shake anymore. You know, the ulama, people, there are reports of people dying when they heard the name of the Prophet ﷺ. I mean, they don't have that same, it's not the same effect anymore for certain people. So definitely that should be, because people use it on the internet now, like, I even, disgustingly, I couldn't believe it, like Muhammad PBUH. I mean, even to mention the name of the Prophet, Busiri in his entire Burda mentions the word Muhammad twice. Once for the Prophet, once for himself. In 160 lines, the word is mentioned twice. Once for himself, being named Muhammad, and once for the Prophet. Because when you talk about the beloved, inference is the best way. The Sahaba never called him by his name. Ever. In fact, Imam Bajuri, Ibrahim Bajuri, has come to Sham al-Tirmidhi, states they never called him a Rajul. And in the hadith of Anas ibn Malik, kana rajulan marbu'a, he was a man that was medium heighted. He said the word doesn't mean rajul, it means rajula to sha'r, that his hair was slightly curly at the back. He said none of the Sahaba even called him that. And God never called him by his name in the Quran, ever, not once in the Quran does God call the messenger of God by his name. He gives him lofty titles, Ya Ayyuhal Muddaththir, Ya Al-Muzammil, Ya Taha, or Yasin, all of these great lofty names, but not his name, which shows you that whenever one mentions the name of the Prophet ﷺ, he should be in a state of at least contemplation. But now it's been almost restricted. Look at Asian people, whatever their child's name was, they put Muhammad at the beginning. Now, although that's not traditional, but they had the intention maybe of this hadith, which is weak, but still, that whoever is named Muhammad on the Day of Judgment will get my intercession or be free from the hellfire. They just did it for that reason, which is an incredible intention. And Busiri's name is Muhammad as well, you see. So always has to be in a state of one of the not just one, I've several of the shuyukh, very old people of God, whenever they heard the name of the Prophet, they stand up. They just stand up. I mean, which shows you the you know, قوموا لسيدكم or لذكر اسم سيدكم, which is a great. Nowadays it's kind of, because we don't even call each other with affection, or you know, there are people on Mimbar saying all sorts of things about not respecting great people and using their names in vain and misinterpreting. The Sahaba were very, very careful. You know, they would weep at night lest they, thinking that they may have caused some offense to the Messenger of God alayhi salatu wasalam. Every revelation that came, they asked, according to some narrations, less than 80, some less than 50 questions in the entire lifetime of the Sahaba, fearing that God would reveal against them. Incredible level of respect and overwhelming adab and etiquette in front of the best of creation, which has to be kind of, it's lost in this day and age because nobody has respect anymore. The Prophet ﷺ said, when a community is born out of wedlock, the society is destroyed. And we're just kind of picking up on these habits. And Allah Musta'an, basically, it's the greatest fear now is not, if you look now in society, what's disappearing is the traditional love for Ahlul Sunnah for the Prophet ﷺ is barely there anymore. You'll find 100 gatherings, and 100 of them, 99 of them, you'll find that people don't know how to talk about the Prophet ﷺ. Would just not how to present, how to talk about him. They talk about him like without understanding the kind of care that you need to take when mentioning his name. It's become arbitrary almost. People don't. It's so what, you know, and that's the greatest one, the greatest signs of the Day of Judgment. That there's no respect left, adab, amongst people when they talk about the Messenger of God alayhi salatu wasalam. You won't find it in many places, really. I swear to you, you go to places, especially religious gatherings, are the worst. You see, like hadith, people now, and this is just a lesson for all of us. I don't understand why. Don't send hadith over text messages. You know, people traveled for months to collect one hadith verbally, and then write it down. We send them across text messages like it's along with all the other rubbish that we send. It's such a sacred science that Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala would not teach hadith until he had made ghusl and dressed in the best of his clothes. and was bitten by a scorpion, but still continued narrating the hadith with 100,000 people silent in his gathering. Silent in his gathering. Now when somebody's speaking, they say, I think the messenger said, I think he said. We're talking about, I mean, sending him over email, chain messages, the messenger of God, alayhi salatu wasalam. If you don't know what he said, if you've not been taught it, if you don't understand it properly, then save yourself from Jahannam. The Prophet ﷺ said a man can say one thing and send himself 70 levels into the hellfire just by one word. So people have to be very, very careful of saying that, or presenting something that the messenger of God said. You may have got it wrong, context wrong, adab as well. What environment are you in? People are smoking, and they're saying the messenger of God said. This is not or over food with their mouth full, quoting the words of the messenger of God alayhi salatu wasalam, or people are shouting. It's a bad environment. It's not the place to talk about the messenger of God. The place needs to be pure. The intentions need to be pure. Otherwise, no. Sheikh Abdul Aziz Dabbagh, and remember, this is a man, some say didn't reach the age of 30, who he couldn't read or write, but yeah, his student Al-Lamati wrote the whole of Ibriz. There were the words of his Shaykh, and he would go to him, and his student was a scholar. The Shaykh wasn't considered alim because his knowledge was laduni from God directly, not like wahi but ilham. So he said, I went to him, and this is a great Shaykh now. This is his spiritual master, but he's unlettered. So he sat there. He said, I quoted the hadith, and he said, he looked at my face, and he said, that's not hadith. And he said, like, I'm the scholar. I mean, he said, I went back, I checked, and the hadith was fabricated. He said, I came back, said, Shaykh, how do you know? He said, because when you speak and you mention hadith and it's true, light comes from your mouth, I can see. And when it does not, it's not the words of the Prophet ﷺ. As a man who flew in front of Bab Bujlud, I mean, this is because of the adab for the Prophet ﷺ, the great love and connection to the words of the Messenger of Allah. Now we have to observe great adab for the Prophet ﷺ. Sahaba would lift their heads up in front of him. There was Sahaba who never really saw the face of the Prophet ﷺ. You'll be shocked at this. In the books of Sirah, some of the Sahaba could not describe him. They couldn't do it because they never saw his face. They would look up and they would look back down. They literally couldn't describe his face because they just couldn't look at it. They would feel it. They were so overpowered by his light and his jah, almost, that they wouldn't look at his face. For a Sahabi to say to God to take away his eyesight, and God took it away after the demise of the Prophet ﷺ, it shows you the kind of so the respect that they had is, I mean, this is untold amount of respect you find in all of the books. And I think we need to revive this is not an age of change, it's an age of control. Can't change anything anymore. It's the tide is, this Mawj al-Bahar, the waves have already struck the shore. It's very difficult. Age of control. And all I say to people, we may not be able to change people, but at least within our own families, our children, the people close to us, at least if we can have adab for the Prophet ﷺ, we'll be together on the Day of Judgment under Liwa ul-Hamd, the flag of the Prophet ﷺ, inshallah, because it's an age of control now. We bemoan, but it's just going that way. We can't avoid it. But if we have it, and our forefathers had it from the subcontinent, these people had adab for the Prophet ﷺ. They were the worst people in the world. But when it came to the Prophet ﷺ, the people say, oh, but they weren't very practicing, they weren't very this, they weren't very that. And this is a generation who are falling into atheism are saying this. Our generation have fallen into atheism, and we are judging people who, okay, they may not pray much, but look at the love of the Prophet ﷺ is the thing that saved them. It saved them from when you mention, like, somebody would be in an argument with them and they would disagree, and they would say, but the Prophet ﷺ said, immediately there will be sakati ani. Everybody will be silent. There's no word after that. Nobody would ever argue about that. So, all right, okay. You see, and I mean, this is incredible adab, and I think adab is like Sayyid Naqib al-Attas said, he said, if the world has lost one thing, it's adab, it's etiquette and manners. That they've lost that, if they've lost anything. And that's why people don't see the Prophet ﷺ anymore in their dreams. One of the ulama said, he said, if you want to see the messenger of God in your dream, he said, stop doing makruh things. He said, makruhat. He said, stay away from makruhat. Because he said, the Prophet ﷺ said that there is al-halalu bayin wal-haram bayin. Haram and halal is clear. Between them is a grey area. And beware of it. It's like a shepherd taking his sheep to the fence. not knowing if it's his land or somebody else's land and letting them eat there. And he said, stay away from the makruhat, and then the Prophet will visit you, because he loves people who endeavor to be pure. So, I mean, that's, we hope, inshallah. I'll see everybody.
One line. Sometimes one fears that if they see the Messenger of Allah sallam, they will fall into a manner which will disrespect him. Is this from shaitan? And if so, how could they get rid of it?
I mean, you know, there cannot be any feeling that precedes the presence of the Prophet ﷺ, because you can feel however you want. When you see the Messenger of God, you don't dictate the meeting. He dictates the meeting. It's your adab is automatic. It's like people that say, how do I know I'll see the Messenger of God? The ulama are very clear. They say, you'll know you'll see the Messenger of God. I mean, it's not about adab. You have no choice in that gathering. The Prophet ﷺ's overwhelming spiritual power will kind of govern all your thoughts, feelings, and reactions. You see, that's not your choice. You don't have any choice in that. I mean, it's good enough just to want to see the Prophet ﷺ. There's no worry in that. How can there be worry if, you know, it's like, I'll give you just it's not really, it's not an analogy, but if you, for instance, are in a distant country and you're feeling very lonely, I mean, often it doesn't matter if they're boys or girls, the first person they remember is their mother. They remember their mother because of especially mother who's nursed a child all of his life. They remember their mother. I remember I went to Syria first time I was 14 years ago. I saw people crying there, grown men, because they missed their mothers. Crying, literally, I mean, because, but my point is here, that would anybody ever fear if their mother passed away, seeing their mother in their dream, that they would have adab when they met her? No, because the overwhelming comfort that they know they'll feel when they meet her. You never feel that way. It's the same with the Messenger of Allah, but magnified. So it's not, there's no fear in seeing the Messenger of Allah. It's comfort, more comfort than seeing your own mother or a family member, because the Prophet ﷺ is closer to people than their family members. So that's my point. So there's nothing in that. No, there's no fear in that. And this week I've heard from it's also on the internet and stuff like this, of people misunderstanding the Messenger of God ﷺ, misunderstanding the relationship of the Sahaba with him. I'll give you one example. When you talk about love, before I was going to give this example in the next line, but I'll give it immediately, straight away. You know, the Sahaba, people constantly call Sayyidina Umar, you know, and they misquote Sayyidina Umar, certain hadith about Sayyidina Umar radhiyallahu anhu, that about he was very strict, and he was constantly telling people, reminding people, exhorting people to the Sunnah, that you have to follow the Sunnah. And some people make it out like it was kind of, he was just pushing people just to do the action. But if you look at Sayyidina Umar's love for the Messenger of God ﷺ, it's incredible. I mean, he killed people because of the Messenger of God, but they just disrespected him, you know, and he killed a Muslim because of that, because he refused to accept the opinion of the Messenger of God. He chopped his head off, and Allah exonerated him in the Quran for it. He had an extreme amount of love for the Prophet ﷺ. We'll talk about it later, but let's look at Abu Musa al-Ash'ari very specifically. After the demise of the Messenger of Allah, I don't really like the word, but there are not many words in English for it. After the Prophet ﷺ left this world, the Sahaba have struggled a lot, and we're going to talk about that in the next line. But one specific example I want to mention now, if you want to look at real love, love is something that's uncontrollable. The governor of Medina saw a man lying literally with his face against the grave of the Prophet ﷺ. He was like lying on the grave, and he went to rebuke him. Like, you know, what's this guy doing? When he turned to look, it was Abu Musa al-Ash'ari. Abu Musa al-Ash'ari is Abu Ayyub al-Ansari, he's a massive Sahabi. When he saw him, in one story, he asks him what he's doing, and he says, "Who do you think you are?" Like, I'm the companion of the Messenger of God. He was so overcome by his love for the Messenger of Allah, people literally sleep next to his grave. This was for a very, very long time. So that's kind of forgotten when these people kind of mention, "Oh, we also love the Messenger of God." I mean, love is very cheap word these days. You see, And it's almost like we love everybody else in a very particular way, like we say, unconditional. You know, people love women and they show their love for women. And some of these are the same people that promote this type of thinking and this kind of undeniable, unconditional love. But when it comes to the Messenger of Allah, all of a sudden everybody brings these restrictions. You know, the love that the Sahaba had for him was absolutely uncontrollable. For a man to spend his nights sleeping on the grave of the Messenger of God is an uncontrollable amount of love for the Prophet ﷺ. Or when they saw some of the companions literally going to the grave of the Prophet ﷺ and taking the dust and putting it over their bodies. It's an uncontrollable amount of love for the Prophet ﷺ. You know, so I don't buy this kind of restricted for the Messenger of God. But then when it comes to, they've got more appellations for their relatives or their wives or than the Messenger of God. Oh, be careful, you know, you don't want to kind of exceed I mean, to sleep next to somebody's grave for nights on end, or to leave your hometown, to leave a place where you've moved to and return just because the Messenger of God tells you to in your dream. We're going to get to that later, inshallah. So he's crying, and crying was amongst the Sahaba a great sign of love, crying. And it wasn't crying that was kind of triggered by people around them. Sayyidina Abu Bakr, if you look at just before the Prophet left this world, the Messenger of God was too ill to leave the house for Salah, and he was with his wife Aisha radiallahu anha, and he said, tell Abu Bakr to lead the prayer. And her answer was, she said, my father will not be able to lead it. And the reason she said that was because she said he has a very soft heart and he'll be overcome by emotion leading the prayer with the word of God, because he would profusely cry. And the Prophet ﷺ commanded her to tell Abu Bakr still to lead the prayer. And he would constantly say, the Umar as well, they break down in their prayers because of their great connection. It wasn't a pseudo quasi type of love. It was very manifest in real true love. Saying Abu Bakr, they would find him in the night time in his house, they could hear him calling for beseeching the Messenger of God in the night time, weeping for the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam. So tears were kind of true. Now it's kind of, tears are quite circumstantial now in a gathering, and sometimes it's better not to, even if people have the emotion, lest we mix our intentions up. The Prophet ﷺ mentioned a person who's truly receives the shade of Allah on the Day of Judgment. He mentioned 7. There are more than 7 actually, up to 40 people who receive the shade. But the last person in the hadith is رَجُلٌ ذَكَرَ اللَّهَ خَالِيًا فَفَادَتْ عَيْنَهُ, a man who remembered God when he was alone and he wept. And that hadith almost is for us, like, because we don't know if our tears are true or they're not, or sometimes get caught up in that. We believe them to be true, but loving the tears for the Messenger of Allah, not for we follow his Sunnah, but for him, alayhi salatu wasalam. They did an experiment with tears of actually Abdul Jabbar said he'll know better about this, about tears of joy and tears of pain under a microscope, and how they were different. The structure was different. It was incredible. I read it and it was amazing for different scenarios. I don't know how they tested it actually. So it was a sign. Now it's very difficult to tell if it is. But however, I was in Damascus. This was 2002, and one of my friends, he asked one of the sheikhs. He said, I can't weep, I can't cry. It doesn't work for me, And he said, what should I do? Is there a way of changing that? And the sheikh said to him that visit graveyards and God will soften your heart. Visit death, the destroyer of all pleasures, as the Prophet ﷺ said. He said that will soften your heart to cry. And it's amazing how they say that even stones reacted to the Prophet ﷺ. Stones are inanimate, then they don't have life. And they say now that even one of the ulama, he said, even stones, they react to the Messenger of God, but hearts in this time have no reaction to the Prophet ﷺ. And all they did was they just touched his hand. And Anas ibn Malik, a very special hadith. He was a boy, and I mentioned this probably before. I'll repeat things as I go along. He said that the Prophet ﷺ, he just picked them up and they began to shake in his hand and call, make dhikr of Allah. He kind of gave them life, bi'idhnillah. And he put them in the hands of Abu Bakr and Umar. They carried on. He said later we picked them up, like put them in our hands, and he said it didn't work anymore. He was only a boy. He wasn't at that level of Abu Bakr and Umar where he could get the stones to react like that. But they just touched the hand of the Prophet ﷺ, which is incredible because they just touch his hand and they receive life. You see, and they would give him salam as well. Stones in the sacred precinct would give salam to the Messenger of God, alayhi salatu, recognizing him. And we're going to talk about recognition. Imam Malik radiallahu anh, his stories are incredible, but I mean, the ones that I want to talk about, when the leader he whipped Imam Malik in Medina al-Munawwara, because Imam Malik wouldn't give a ruling in his favor. But what's incredible is after he tortured Malik radiallahu anh, Imam Malik was tortured, Imam Dar al-Hijra. Imam Malik sent one of his students to him and said, tell him that I forgive him for it. Shaykh Muhammad al-Qattani mentions, does anybody know why he forgave him for it? Anybody here know? He forgave him only for one reason. He forgave him because he was from the family of the Prophet ﷺ. He said, by God, I do not want to meet the Messenger of God and be responsible for one of his progeny being punished for Malik's sake. So he forgave him because he was al-Bayt. That's the only reason he forgave him. Which is incredible, the love that he had, that to be beaten and to be strapped to a donkey and be beaten through Medina by a man, that you would forgive him because he's from the family of the Prophet ﷺ. So you can see his incredible love for the Messenger of God. He wouldn't ride an animal in Medina. He wouldn't wear slippers or sandals in Medina. And he wouldn't let anybody raise their voice in the masjid of the Prophet ﷺ. Which is, Imam Malik is one of the greatest lovers. He said, I didn't go to sleep except all his life, except that I saw the Messenger of God in my dream every night of my life. Imam Malik, when he was younger, was it Imam Malik? Yeah, I think Imam Malik or Shafi'i. I think Imam Malik wanted to be a singer. He wanted to sing, not singer like we have now. And he was then pushed into the line of, and his mother sent him out very young. He was a very young boy. And Imam Malik said that I studied with 6,000 teachers. 6,000 teachers Malik had, which is incredible. And he memorized over 1 million hadith. But overwhelmingly, he was completely overcome by the love of the Prophet ﷺ. Now, so he stays Talal is Mecca. Now, what I want to talk about is my tafsir on Talal. I believe that the word Talal here refers to any single thing that is connected to the Prophet ﷺ, and that's what I want to talk about. Anything connected to the Messenger of God. Anything. A relic, for instance, or relics is kind of my topic that I want to talk about today. And people taking tabarruk, taking blessings from the Messenger of Allah, and I'll give you my, I'll mention why. A day and age where people are so obsessed with mobile phones, and they love them, they buy them, they unwrap them, they cover them in invisible shields and cases just in case they may crack, coveting these mobile devices for them only 9 months later to buy, the new arrival and throw the other away. Look how we protect dunya. Look how we protect dunya. How we love it, and we protect it, and we shield it. But yeah, people don't do that with the Messenger of God, alayhi salatu wasalam. Allahu ya'asimuka minan nas. God will protect you from the people. And because of that relationship being lost, we don't enshroud the Messenger of God in these great clothes of heavenly garments of praise. Because of that, we're more concerned with kind of material goods. And people you may deny, but we have more almost spontaneous love for the dunya than we do with the Messenger of God. The excitement that people feel when a new device comes out is not the excitement they feel when they hear the name of the Prophet ﷺ. It's not. It's just absolute reality. Imam Ja'far Sadiq, they say that when they saw him, he was uncontrollably overcome by a state that he would weep until they would just leave him alone, weeping, when the Messenger of God was mentioned. I talked to Abdul bin Umar. This is not just one or two of them, even though Imam Ja'far Sadiq is the great-great-grandson of the Prophet ﷺ. This was all of the Sahaba. Their state was absolutely this. Saying that Abu Bakr would be found in the evening saying, Ya Shawqah. He would be almost beseeching the Messenger of God in the nighttime, wouldn't be able to sleep in the evening. He only lived for 3 years after the Prophet ﷺ, Abu Bakr Siddiq, only for 3 years. So the thought is almost as if they were pleading with God that the qadr be that they only have a few days left. So the Fatima Zahra alayhi salam, the youngest daughter of the Prophet ﷺ, the greatest woman that God ever created alayhi salam, was 6 months after she left this world, as a promise from her father. She was, if you want to know love, there are very few riwayat. If you want to know people who love the Messenger of God, if you look at his daughter, say the Fatima Zahra alayhi salam, I've not found anybody that shows that over, it was almost to her, it would make her ill. And the Messenger of God, it was reciprocated. It was his favorite daughter. He loved her the most. There's a narration, a beautiful narration where when Ruqayya passed away, Ruqayya is the older and she passed away. She was the first wife of Sayyidina Uthman from the two daughters. Then the Prophet Kulthum to him. And she passed away, and say that she was the closest to say the Fatima Zahra. And she was weeping, and she was weeping and weeping, and the Prophet was weeping with her. And Sayyidina Umar had already told people not to weep and this was after Badr. After the Badr had taken place, people are weeping for the martyrs of Badr. And he said, why are you weeping? And the Messenger of God told us not to. And then when he met the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam, the Prophet said, he said, as for this, he said, and this, he said, there's nothing. The heart and the eyes. He said, as for this and this, he said, that's sinful. Meaning, as for screaming and beating your chest, no. But as for this and this, he said, is a mercy from God. Is a mercy from God. And she's in that hadith. She's in very few hadith. One of the other great hadith that she's in is as one who aids the Messenger of God against the Quraysh as a little girl, very, very young girl. And the hadith is incredible because if you want to, which nobody should ever, of course, but the kuffar, they do things. If people want to find the displeasure of the Messenger of God, they'll find it in upsetting his family, especially his daughter, alayhi salam. When they threw the carcass on him and she came running very young, she was weeping, crying, and she cleaned. Literally, she was cleaning the clothes of the Messenger of God, and then she took him into the house. The Prophet ﷺ cursed them for it. You read Sirah, he never curses anybody by name, except at that moment. Every single one of those people died. Which shows you the great importance of Sayyidah Fatima Zahra alayhi salam, and in connection to the Messenger of God, that on the Day of Judgment she crosses the bridge and all the angels lower their heads in front of her. I mean, this is an incredible amount of love, because when he was passing away, she was with him, and I said in another, maybe in the last lesson, I said, God took away, qadr al-maqdura, all of his daughters died. All of his daughters, his wife, said the Khadijatul Kubra died, passed away. His uncle Hamza was killed. Abu Talib died. All of these great people and the people that the Prophet loved passed away, except Fatima Zahra alayhi salam, which is very odd. Because why did Allah, it was almost a gift and a mercy to the Prophet that he did not have to see Fatima Zahra leave this world. It was as if it were a gift to him. And it shows his closeness to her. And she's one of the greatest ones who loved the Messenger of God alayhi salatu. And I'll mention some of the others as well. The Prophet said that close to the Day of Judgment, he said, God will take the people of knowledge, ulama. This means people in knowledge of God, and they'll be replaced by ignoramuses. will speak and not know what they're saying. They'll be misguided and they'll misguide other people. As people say, oh, you know, loving the Messenger of God is following the Messenger of God. I've got one question for you. When Sayyidina Umar went to the Prophet ﷺ, he sat in front of him. He said, Ya Rasulullah. He said, Ya Rasulullah, inni la uhibbuk. He said, by God, I love you. I love you more than anything except this here, he said. The Prophet ﷺ said to him, Ya Umar, that's not sufficient, huh? Until you love me more than that. He said, Ya Rasulullah, I love you. Inni la uhibbuka. Then he said, more than this then. He said, now you're complete. I want to ask one question. Between him saying he loves the Messenger of God more than everybody except this, and him saying he loves the Messenger of God more than everything, what following did he do? Tell me. What sunnah did he follow? He did nothing. It was the state of his heart changed momentarily. And that state of heart changing shows you that ittiba is, we talked about it, you have to follow the Messenger of God, not because he told you to follow him. It's because of the overwhelming love that you have. The consequence of that for everybody would be that you follow him. You see, and this is very, very important. You can follow somebody out of force, out of compulsion. You know, you go to work, you have to do loads of things. Right? They tell you do this, do that. You can follow people out of dunya. And these people who talk like this, they follow the Messenger of God, and this is all tijara for them, all dunya for them. They've sold their deen li thamanin qalila, for a very, very small pittance. Because true love of the Messenger of Allah permeates all of these things. It's what Bilal, was it that Bilal prayed 4 nafil extra and he saw the Messenger of God? No, he couldn't go to sleep. These people say that Abu Bakr, the Prophet ﷺ said, it's not because Abu Bakr prays more than you or he fasts more than you. It's because God has put a secret in his heart that nobody else has. And that's the love for me. I mean, that's not denying practice. Practice or denying practice is the way of the Jabariya, a particular deviant group from before. And some Muslims, unfortunately, have fallen into that. But loving the Messenger of God is completely internal. What practice are you going to do? What are you going to do in Jannah? Jannah, the love of the Messenger of Allah, is something that has to be there before you go in. There's no salah in Jannah. No salah in Jannah. It's just in the suhbah of the Messenger of God. Somebody asked me once, what people get bored in Jannah? When they get bored in Jannah. And I said to them, you know Adam alayhi salam. Adam alayhi salam, Allah put him in Jannah and gave him every bit of dunya. Dunya, I mean by here, not dunya as we know, but material goods, material beauties. The fruits of Jannah, the palaces of Jannah. أعطاه كل شيء. He gave him everything. And then he went back to Allah after some time. Ya Allah, I'm not content here. This doesn't fulfill what you've created in me. And can't you? He said, Allah, create for me somebody that I can share this with. And God created for Sayyidina Adam Hawa. Why did he create Hawa for him? It shows you that material serves no purpose to people's achieving peace. Material, nothing. Al-Jannah is not Al-Jannah because there's palaces. These people say, you know, we're going to go fight jihad because we're going to get Hurul Ain. Do you think Sahaba said that? Do you think Sahaba said that? You know, Hanzala. Let's talk about Hanzala. Hanzala on the day of Uhud. Hanzala, they say, Hanzala married a woman that was of extreme beauty. Extreme beauty. And Hanzala was not one of those Sahaba that was famous for being the most handsome of the Sahaba. Very important how we talk about Sahaba. And he married her. And then on his wedding night, when after consummating the marriage, she had a dream. And in her dream, she saw Hanzala at the gates of Jannah. And she told him, and he knew that he would be martyred. So she held him and didn't let him go. And Hanzala left the house without making ghusl. And he fought in the battle and he died. And when he passed away, the Messenger of Allah looked up And he smiled and he said, the angels give ghusl to Hanzala. Do you think Hanzala fought and died because he wanted Hurul Ain? There was a young boy, 15 years old in Badr, and he had some dates in his hand and he was getting ready. And he looked up, he said, Ya Rasulullah, what is it that is between me and Al-Jannah? What's between me and Jannah? Is it just these people over here? He said, yes. They say he put the dates down, unsheathed his sword and ran into the enemy and was martyred. These people didn't have that. They wanted Sohbah after the Prophet ﷺ asked one of the Sahaba, he said, what do you want? If you want anything, I'll give you whatever you want. And this was in the hand of the Messenger, فَإِنَّهُ قَاسِمٌ. He hands it out. He said, what do you want? He said, Ya Rasul, let me think about it. Because it's not an easy choice to make. The Prophet ﷺ says to you, what would you like? What would you say it? If he came to you and said, if anything you want, what would you want? So he said, give me 3 days. 3 days, I'll be back in 3 days, enough time to think about it. And he returns to the Prophet ﷺ, and he said, what I would wish is to be with you, sohbatuk, to be with you in Al-Jannah. If people think they're going to get bored in Al-Jannah, then they've completely misinterpreted it. Jannah is about the Messenger of God, alayhi salam, and nothing else. Is to be with the Messenger of Allah, alayhi salatu wasalam. We'll do plenty of ihtifalat there. Mawlids will be every day.